When it comes to older computer hardware, do you throw it away? Do you sell it if there's any value left at all? Or do you turn it into artwork? What do you do? What do you do? In my case, I had the parts left over from the home theater PC that I once used on a regular basis that no longer serves a purpose in my life, and some leftover plywood from a bathroom repair project when I put in a new floor. Combining these items together can create a fairly interesting piece of hardware. Dare I say, a piece of artwork. In this video, we're going to go over the trials and tribulations of my efforts of building a custom wall-mounted PC using mostly leftover parts, stuff I've had lying around the house, and a few odds and ends from the hardware store. And in the case of that monitor that you see, I found that in a thrift store for about $5. The purpose of this build is to exercise my creative sense, to build something really cool to hang on the wall in my office at work, and to use up a few things I've had lying around the house and need to desperately get rid of. And there's the shell for the monitor as I had to disassemble it. This particular build is not intended to be high performance. It's not intended to be really much more than a display piece. The vinyl that I'm going to be using on this project that you just saw is actually leftover vinyl from when I built a custom center cover for my motor scooter about 4 years ago. This is going to be entertaining. It's going to be nerve-wracking as I try to engineer these parts and do something that not only looks good, but actually serves a purpose. This will be a multi-part series. I can't possibly cram it all into one video. This first set of videos, or set of clips that I'm putting together, will mostly be the initial planning, and we'll do some painting, we'll do some assembly, and we'll do some brain scratching as we try to figure out the best way to lay these parts out. We have to establish an effective cooling system. We have to add, of course, LED lighting, because everything has to have LED lighting these days, RGB, no less. We need it to function, and we need it to be safe to use. It can't be dangerous. There can't be any exposed wiring. You get the idea. I'm going to be doing things in this project that I've never done before. I've never worked with plexiglass. I've never worked with some of the woodworking techniques that I'm going to be using I've never done before. This will be very interesting. I hope you enjoy. It is water-cooled. As you just saw, that is the water cooling system that came out of the home theater PC. I believe that was a Corsair product. And yes, it works. It is a, if you want to know what the specs are, I'll tell you right now. It's going to be an AMD Phenom X6 based system. I don't recall the motherboard specs in detail, but it is a 6-core AMD water cooled. The hard drive is going to be a 500 gig drive. We've got a modified ATX power supply. I've had to cut off a lot of unused cabling for just to reduce the amount of clutter in this system. It has 8 gigabytes of RAM, and I can't remember offhand what kind of memory it was. I believe it's DDR4 though. Anyway, enjoy the build and try to throw logic out the window. Logic dictates that we should have a solid-state disk and high-performance graphics, and we're not doing any of that. That's not the point of this build. But the great thing about this system is it is relatively modular. So in the future, should I decide to make some major upgrades, I can do so. The goal here is to have the system serviceable for repairs or upgrades. The monitor and the logic board are replaceable. So let's see what happens.
Power reset. Ooh, hear the water? Let's see if we can get any video. So the specs on this board are as follows. Ooh, hey, it works. The specs are, they're pretty bare bones. Oh, I never plugged in the CPU fan. But the pump's running. I hear the pump going, but that's not hooked up yet. So this is going to start warming up eventually. That's okay. We're not going to do much with it right now. So it looks like it runs. She's a runner. Look at that. Just as I remembered. Well, so yeah, I have high hopes here. I think this is going to be a pretty cool build. It's going to be more for visual effect than anything else. There's, like I said, there's going to be LED lighting. I'm going to be painting a lot of stuff. For example, the power supply will be painted, I'm thinking yellow. But she's a good runner. This display is nice too. And this nice little capacitive touch. It's got audio feedback. Oh, that's so cool. I'm going to integrate that. So what I actually did, this is part of the bezel. And I had to almost touch that power supply. That would have hurt. It was part of the bezel. And I had to take my my miter saw and cut the panel section out. Because this is going to be somehow integrated into it. I'm not sure how yet, though. But I have a good idea as to how... Yeah, that's good. Lay it on top of something metal. Smart guy. Smart guy. And now that all those caps are charged up, I've got to be really careful before I touch them. But we've got some LEDs on the board for visual effect. We've got our hard drive indicator on there. We've got... It's a pretty nice board for what it is. This thing even generating any heat at all? Not really. Yeah, this thing isn't even going to break a sweat. When it's finally in place for what it's going to be used for, it's not even going to break a sweat. But that's the preliminary layout here. So this is going to sit horizontal. And what it's going to do is it's going to... So this is... Power supplies are almost always exhaust fans. So we're going to have this set up as an intake. It's going to be taking in that air and blowing it around. And then we're going to have... I'm going to drill holes in the frame, you know, in spots where there might be a lot of heat. This fan at full speed really pushes some serious air. So that hard drive is going to be mounted up on some metal brackets that I've got to make. So this is really, we're just in the very early stages of what this is going to look like. I've decided on having the motherboard headers on the inside of the case. And we're going to have some breakout connectors for various things attached to it. I'm going to put this into the design as well. Probably going to mount it to the side, maybe to the bottom, maybe under the monitor. That'd be kind of nice. Put it right there, and we'll have that's going to give us a USB 2.0 and memory card slots. I'm just trying to use up junk, guys. That's all. I'm not looking to build anything spectacular. Now, if this thing turns out to be really awesome, then hey, maybe I'll build another one. Maybe do it with some nice stuff. But this is really just trying to use up garbage. What's your new favorite spot? Where's your brother? Is he in there? Oreo? No? Okay. We're on the upholstery station. We've got some marine vinyl. Purchased for another project about 4 years ago. And we're going to cover this with marine vinyl. To do that, I'm going to get some Aleene's tacky spray. It's cheaper than the 3M crap. It works just as good. And we're going to liberally coat this board with adhesive. Well, so I've gone and wrapped the board in vinyl. I didn't do a great job. I'm going to have to tighten up some of these edges a little bit. That's easy enough. I'll do that. But we sprayed it down with Aleene's tacky glue just to keep things in place, and we stapled it on the back side with a just a standard spring-powered stapler, nothing fancy, no pneumatics or anything, and kind of roll the edges in. So then, tomorrow, because I got to work tomorrow, vacation's over, guys. So when I go to work tomorrow, I'm going to pick up some lumber, and we're going to build a box frame that goes around this. I'm also going to pick up some plexiglass. So this is a 4 foot by, I think it's 1.5 feet tall. We have our first victim. We have our LCD panel painted in fluorescent paint. And it's after one coat. We're going to let that dry, put a second coat on, and then we'll pull the tape off, see how that survived, see how that looks. Well, I think I painted it a little bit too heavy. I got some fish eyes on the top here, and a couple of runs over on this side. Whatever. It'll do. We'll let it dry, then we'll probably give it another coat. I'm going to caution you guys on buying Krylon paint, and here's why. This isn't the first time this has happened to me. This is like the third time. Their lids are a pain in the ass to get off. Okay? And I stupidly attached the lid after I used the paint. The thing is, you have to squeeze really tight to get the lid off. And unless you get the lid off perfectly straight up, it always breaks the nozzle off. This can be seriously dangerous because I actually had one can where the nozzle snapped off and it opened the valve. And I couldn't close it. So I had to throw the paint out into the yard while it spun around, shooting its contents all over the place. Don't buy Krylon paints, guys. This is why. I used this can once. Now it's garbage. And I will be bringing it back to the store. I paid good money for this paint and I'm not going to waste it. It's not like I can replace the nozzle because it's broken off right in the valve. Absolute bullshit. Absolute bullshit. Rust-Oleum cans, on the other hand, are much easier to get open. And they don't have a stupid valve design like that. I'm very upset. I'm actually very upset because now I have to go back to the store, get another can of Krylon yellow, but I'm not going to. I think I'm done with it anyway. But what I'm doing is I'm reassembling the display in a way that I can invert it, put it back where it belongs. When this display was built, the manufacturer, which was probably, it could have been Lenovo, but I don't think they make their own displays. They actually mounted the electronics, the power supply, the backlight power supply. This is the backlight power supply right here that controls the LED backlighting. And then you've got your, I can't remember the name of this, but this is basically the image processing board. It's your input board, and it takes power from the power supply in this way, and it provides an image out this way. There's a T-Con board, maybe? I think it's... No, it's not a T-Con board. But anyway, these were mounted in a metal box that was taped with foil tape to the back of the panel and then stuffed into a plastic enclosure. The way I'm doing it is a little different. I'm leaving it all open. I probably should have kept the metal box in hindsight, but I wasn't thinking. Oh, their neighbors are lighting off fireworks. It's New Year's, by the way, New Year's Eve. So it was all done. Yeah, I probably should have kept the metal box, but I threw it out by accident, so I'm stuck doing this. So this is what we got going on. I've mounted these to the back of the panel directly. Now this does have the added benefit of lowering the profile just a wee bit. I'm using, for spacing material, dense felt pads that are self-adhesive. They adhere directly to the metal backing here. And I'm keeping these components in position with silicone. And once that cures, it'll be permanent, really. It'll be a pain in the ass to get these apart. So that's going to be then mounted to the board on wooden pegs that I'm building standoffs out of. So basically there'll be a wooden peg here, 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 and here, or here, 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 and here. Wherever it's structural, they'll be epoxied to the metal backing and screwed to the wood. So that's going to keep the display in position. And the epoxy that I'm using is a self-mixing epoxy. It'll be good. This is going to take about 24 hours to cure, so we're just going to leave this alone for now. And then I'm going to reposition this cabling and tie things down a little better. I wanted the electronics to be visible. I wanted the boards to kind of be visible behind the display, but that's not going to happen. Instead, what I'm considering doing is getting another strip of LEDs and mounting them to the back of the display panel so that they cast light against the black background. But the black, of course, will absorb the light, so it'll be more of a subtle glow effect than anything else. I think it'll work. Oh, kitty cat's on my desk. Yeah, let's see how that goes. Well, I made a little bit of progress here. So we've got the monitor mounts created. Those are the standoffs. These are made from, actually this is pine. These are cheap dowels that I bought for a different project but never ended up using. Let's see if I got the height right. So I'm going to use a tape measure here. The bottom of the frame should sit at around the 1 1/4 inch mark. Good. Good. We're a wee bit off there, but that's okay. And that one's good. So this one's a little bit tall, but that's alright. Probably just like a 1/16 of an inch, maybe. Well, the biggest step so far, or the second biggest step, is complete. I have the standoffs mounted, the display is secured to the base, and now we can start laying out components for the rest of the system. So these, I actually went out and bought new screws for these. These are 3-inch round-headed slotted screws, and they're chrome plated, so they're going to look nice. It's just unfortunate I couldn't get the holes centered on the standoffs. But this display is securely mounted and there's plenty of clearance in the back. So the power cord is going to be, did I get this in the right direction? Yeah, up is up. Power cord is going to go here, and that's going to be routed along the board that way. And the VGA connector is, I have a 3-foot connector or cable on order, and that's going to go to the logic board. I might pull this standoff off and straighten it out. Let's see if we can do that. It's a little better. The display is definitely secure to the frame. This little control panel is going to be mounted elsewhere, probably somewhere on the top board. when I get that put together. So I'm going to lay out all the parts first. And then, once that's all done, we're going to start looking at getting the frame built. I just bought a new kind of paint for the frame. I'm going to brush the paint onto the frame rather than spray it on for a couple of reasons I don't want to really get into right now, but I just feel that it's a better way to do it. So we have that done. That's a big step right there, and it's perfectly centered where it's, you know, it's 1 and, what is it, 1.5 or so, a little less than 1.5 from here to here, and from here to here, and from here to here. So that's where we want it. Alright, I made significant progress so far. We've got, again, the display is mounted. That's been figured out. I've got the logic board mounted, and it's centered right between here, here, and here, and here. Okay. Not only that, we've got the water cooling system figured out. That is going to be mounted, or it is now permanently mounted right here. And before you say anything, yes, I know what you're about to say, and we'll talk about that. Power supply is now permanently affixed over here. I think it looks good. It's coming out exactly as I had hoped, actually better. Storage devices are going to go over here, and I've decided on a hard drive and a memory card reader just because I have one kicking around and I got to put it somewhere, and this is better than putting it in the trash. Okay, the cooling system is, I've decided on making this an intake fan, so it is taking in fresh cool air from the back through this port here, and the frame of the machine, the red frame that's going around it, is going to have cutouts for fresh air. So there's going to be our intake. This is an exhaust. You're going to notice that there is a little bit more CFM coming through this than there is through this. So we're going to figure that out. It'll have, don't worry, airflow won't be a problem. Initially, this was going to be an exhaust fan, but I'm thinking, you know what? I'd rather cool air come in and then get exhaust somewhere else than the other way around. Now, to mount the radiator to the board, I actually had to do something that I don't believe is recommended by the manufacturer. The thing is, when you're doing stuff like this, there's a little bit of on-the-fly engineering that goes on. You have to kind of engineer this stuff, figure out, you know, risk versus benefit of what are you going to use for hardware, how are components going to be mounted, where are they going to be mounted, and you know, whatever. I actually had to use wood screws, these same screws but only shorter, like a 2-inch version, and they go, or 1.5 inch, and they actually mount through. I should have taken the fan off, but I have the screws going right through the radiator fins. I drilled holes through the fins, not through the core, and I bridged the two fins here. See what I did here? This is not kosher per se, probably not the best solution, but these are hand tight, just snug enough to keep this from moving. It's not going to hurt anything. If you tighten them too much, you're going to puncture the core. This is constructed exactly like an automotive radiator would be constructed, or an air conditioner, evaporator, or condenser. So coolant is stored in these two tanks. Actually, this is a pretty well-made device, but the coolant is in these two tanks, and it flows across through these ridges. These right here, not these corrugated pieces of metal. No, it goes through. This is a tube, a flat tube, each one of these, and the coolant flows across those tubes. That's how this works. If you put any pressure on these, they could crack and they could leak, but I didn't see anything come out, so we're good. There's no leakage. I'm going to test fire this thing, I believe. Just make sure everything's still run. This cooling fan is going to be replaced with an RGB fan, so that's not going to stay here. I'm going to order an RGB fan. I think it's a 120 millimeter. Okay, I made a little more progress. And So we've got the hard drive mounted here, and I've got that. Where did we leave off? Yeah, oh, I had to extend this cable, and then I ended up wrapping it in electrical tape for visual effect, and probably going to do the same thing to the others. I'm going to get some different colored electrical tape. It's going to be a colorful machine, I tell you what. So let's fire it up for the first time since I've mounted things. Make sure it still works. Here we go. The water cooler going. So we have signal. There we go. Nice. Actually is working. Hard drive's kicking in. Nice. Now to get these, I think I mentioned this earlier in the video, but to get these hoses to relax in a different position other than factory, I had to heat them up with a heat gun. But I don't see any leaks, so right now there's no airflow because I don't have the back raised up. When it's mounted to the wall, there'll be like a good inch or so of clearance between the back of this board and the wall. So that won't be an issue when it's mounted. But what I really want to do right now is see how those LED strips look. I'm going to slide them underneath a few things and see if they cast any light against that black background. Okay, so a couple more things I'm going to be doing here. So I planned on rerouting or routing a direct power connection to the LCD all the way to the power supply, so there's only one power cord needed. There's plenty of overhead available for that, so we're not worried about it. Overloading anything. So the other thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be concealing the lighting control module inside this box. There's plenty of room in there, in addition to the card reader itself. It also provides a power tap off the USB circuit on the motherboard. Probably not the best idea. What I actually should do is run a separate power lead. I'm going to take over one of these unused. Then again, I believe it's designed to run on 5 volts DC. So I believe the red wire I believe is 5 volts and the orange wire is 12, or the yellow wire. I'll figure out which one it is. One of those I believe puts out 5 volts, and then I'm going to run a dedicated circuit out of here, and we're going to probably route it under the board on the back. So I'll run a lighting circuit through the back and then tap off where I need to. I don't know. I haven't figured that part out. But I actually am going to put some LEDs on the intake side, behind the board. I noticed that when I tilt the board up, I can see daylight through here, through the radiator. So having some like red LEDs, red and blue maybe, would be pretty cool. Okay, there's our power wire, soldered directly to the back of this terminal, the power terminal, socket, I mean, and routed in a way that should not affect anything negatively. Poor power supply. All it ever wanted to do is provide clean power. So the idea here, at the end of the day, is to have a system that, should I in the future decide to make some upgrades, for example, maybe a new motherboard or a better power supply or whatever, it can be done very easily. So there's nothing really crazy about how these are mounted. I mean, any standard ATX board should fit in this spot very easily. Okay, after plugging in the power supply, we have power to the display. And that, by the way, is irrespective of what's going on with the switch. No matter what I do with the switch, it'll still provide power, so just keep that in mind. This isn't going to shut off the whole system. Just the CPU end of it, or the logic end of it. So there we go. And it's looking clean. Now I've got a 3-foot BGA cable. That's as short as I can get it. That'll jump from here to here, and I'm going to tuck the rest of it behind. There we go. It just goes on for days. And we're back. So today we're going to talk about lighting, and we're going to probably start building the frame. So what I've got going on now is I've got my lighting installed. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Controlled by this remote. There's a remote receiver and the control module in one. It's right there. So I'm going to set it to blue. Turn it on first. There we go. And that is blue. You'll notice, I'm going to turn the lights on so you can see a little better. I deliberately reversed the colors on one of these strips so that it didn't match this one. And I thought it'd be cool, but I think it's stupid. I kind of regret doing that. I can always switch it back. So right now, when I have this set to blue, this strip is blue because that's the first one in line. And then the ones under the display are purple. I'm going to be adding some more strips on the sides of the display. That's easy enough to do, so that it glows a little bit nicer. Set it to red, and then this will turn red, and that'll turn blue. See, you know, because it's all backwards. But all the green colors are the same. So there's light blue, purple. But we're going to add some more lights, and I'm going to have to pull the display off again. Actually, no, I don't think I want to do that, because that actually is going to be a lot of work, because I've already got the wires. Let me show you what I did with the wiring. This is I'm starting to get into, you know, some of the more careful. I'm starting to get things to a point where this thing can't be easily disassembled, because I've got wires running in different directions and tied down and bolted into place. And so as you look in the back, I concealed, let me see if I can angle this right. I concealed all of the lighting wiring in the back. And it all goes into this, there's a hole here, and then it comes back out again. And that's going to be routed somewhere else. It's all very intertwined. Very intertwined. But anyway, so what I'm having to do for the RGB lighting is I've got this light strip kit. And what you do, these are so easy to work with, by the way, if you ever have to do such a thing. All you do is you just make note of the orientation of what's what and where's it going. And you just cut between these segments, and you can actually wire these up individually. They're easy to solder to. Here we go. And you can just, this has been resoldered a few times for testing, but I've been cutting off sections, installing it, and wiring it up and testing it and making sure everything still works. The control module is going to go inside this box. And all it is, and I took it out of its plastic container. It's just this little guy. Simple stuff. Just that, and we're gonna put it right in there, and that's where the control module is gonna live. It's gonna get hot glued inside this box. I'm gonna have to route the. It's gonna get its power from here, which I think is just 5 volts DC, and that's it. That's all she wrote. So I'm gonna find the 5 volt. Let's see, 5 volt pin is going to be, I don't know, I have to look up the pin diagram, but we'll just solder off of this board, and boom, we got 5 volts going to that. But this has to be, I have to drill into the box to get this out of it. I don't know how I'm going to do that yet, but I assure you it'll be great when it's done. So this is how I conceal the LCD or the LED control module. It's down here. It's hidden away. It's powered directly off the USB bus, and I've routed the infrared receiver through the wall of the box. I even put a grommet here so that it looks more, you know, legitimate. And it should, yeah, it works. Yeah, it works really well. Cool. And there's going to be a clear, of course, clear plastic overlay, so, you know, totally going to work just fine. So I pulled a set of computer speakers out of the trash and salvaged them for their goodies. I've got two good oblong speakers, or rectangular speakers, which are compact and will fit nicely in the bottom. And I've got an amplifier board. In the meantime, I've also installed a rail that will allow this to be mounted to a wall. It's an aluminum C-channel that can hang on a, you know, I could probably do like a kind of a wall anchor system, and they can just hang right on there, and it shouldn't go anywhere. The audio amplifier board is probably going to be nestled right about here, just because that's where I have room. Alright, and now we're getting the best glimpse of what this will look like in the end right now. You can see that the frame encompasses the entire device, the entire machine. And I'm really loving it, actually. This is exactly what I had envisioned. I noticed that the hard drive and these are kind of crooked. I could easily fix that. It's not that big a deal. Hard drive, not so much, because it's a little more difficult to relocate. But the SD card slot will be easily easy to fix. I'm going to have to cut out an area for the power supply. So that's got to be done. Oh, and the SD card slot. I'm going to cut out a hole for that. And it'll be recessed in. I'm going to be cutting in holes for speakers here and there, or maybe perhaps here, or on the other side. I'll figure that out as I go along. There is a slight upward curvature in this board here, but not much I can do about that. Actually, no, not really. Maybe a slight curve, but nothing I'm too concerned about. And the holes that I cut for the power supply over here and the SD card slot over here, they will provide the ventilation needed for the CPU cooler. Yeah, I think this is working out just fine. Just fine. Just fine. Once it's all built, holes are cut, I can start painting. I'm going to start by painting the inside of the box. I'm going to paint that. I haven't really decided what color yet. Probably, I'll have to figure that out. I'll get back to you on that one. But I'm going to paint the outside of the box once I have this all sanded. And I'm going to have some wood filler in those areas. This thing isn't as heavy as it looks. I mean, it's heavy, but not as heavy as I expected it to be. I'm actually fairly impressed about that. So, okay.